War of the Nine, Book 1, The Eye of Odin. By Jacob Hawes, Odin made the trip from Midgard to Yggdrasil without an escort. He didn't need one. Sleipnir was the fastest ship in all the 9 realms. Not as fast as the Bifrost, nothing was, but fast enough. No one could overtake him. Even if they were to catch him, they would then be tasked with outmaneuvering the Sleipnir and its shield-melting guns. And any attempt to board the vessel, should they want Sleipnir for themselves, would mean dealing with Odin himself. Hardly an enviable position. He was the All-Father. He went where he wished, unhindered, unopposed. He found Mimir's ship, Yggdrasil, drifting somewhere between Vanaheim and Svartalfheim. Less a ship and more a massive diamond-shaped vessel, rotating slowly in the black. It loomed, a gray box shifting on the other side of the canopy, taking up most of Odin's vision. He killed the thrusters. He didn't click on the autopilot landing sequence. He'd perform the landing himself, as he always did. Some things shouldn't be left to the machines, no matter how popular it was these days, to leave tasks to the dwarven inventions. The obsession with dwarven tech had gotten out of hand lately. It was popular to have parts of one's body removed and replaced, improved. The very idea revolted Odin. There was no improvement in such a procedure, only an acknowledgement of one's weaknesses and inadequacies. It wasn't making yourself better. It was attaching yourself to something like a parasite to a host, suckling at the tit of the dwarven forge world. Let them do what they would. Odin would remain whole, remain himself. The docking bay tunnel was long and narrow. Little yellow lights lit the way until the tunnel opened up into the docking bay itself. Odin eased Sleipnir into place at one of the docking stations. The ship thrummed as mechanical appendages extended from the dock, attaching to the landing gear. A funnel rose from underneath, attaching to the hatch door. There was a hiss. The hatch door slid open. Odin slipped through the hatch. The simulated gravity kicked in and he landed on his feet. He was immediately homesick. When a god enters one's hall, he should soon hear the crackle of the fire, the sounds of laughter. He should see the shadows of guests on the wall, animated and alive, full of the vigor of true fellowship and drink. Mimir's hall was cold and dark, a long corridor that stretched away into shadow. Odin, came a voice from that shadowy place, a high voice with an almost fluty timbre. Nephew, I've been expecting you. Odin frowned. He peered into the gloom. I didn't send word. And you never have to. This was supposedly true. Mimir had an uncanny penchant for prediction. It was an easy thing to forget. It had the air of an elaborate party trick, and it didn't help that Mimir had a tendency to make light of it. He seemed to see it as a personal eccentricity more than anything, a burden even. How long has it been? Came Mimir's voice. Too long, said Odin, without much conviction. As the years passed, it became increasingly difficult to recognize his old uncle. He'd become distant, strange. As Mimir came forward, spreading his arms for a hug, the smile he gave Odin was one that didn't quite reach the eyes. In a way, he looked almost as old as he was, in human terms. His face was lined and worn. His hair was scraggly and gray. His beard scratched against Odin's neck as they embraced. He wore plain robes that could have been mistaken for rags. Come on, I'd like to show you something. I've been busy. He wasn't lying. Mimir was a collector of knowledge, but he also collected rare artifacts, and with equal veracity. Mimir kept his finds, what he called his collection, in the massive chamber in the center of Yggdrasil, the same place that housed the great tree. Sometimes Odin thought the tree itself, with its wisdom-granting sap, was just another artifact to Mimir, another collectible. The pursuit of knowledge made perfect sense to Odin. Mimir's obsessive accumulation of trinkets was another thing entirely. The chamber itself was far taller than it was wide in order to accommodate the tree's breadth and height. It was dizzying to look up at it. It shifted and bristled under the bright floating balls, the artificial suns. It rocked and creaked. It breathed like a living thing. Big verdant leaves twitched and furled like fingers all along the great black boughs. They fluttered overhead, chattering. Green dots of pollen hovered and drifted, giving the chamber a green haze. Every time Odin was drawn to the tree, the mystery of it, the immensity, the beauty. But Mimir had no time for the tree. The tree was commonplace, a permanent fixture such that he hardly noticed it anymore. It was all about the new things, new objects of novelty. Every new thing he acquired was a way for him to glimpse the outside world, to interact with it, all while staying in the safe confines of his hall. So they ignored the tree. They turned their back on it to peruse the collection instead. Mimir's toys ranged from the priceless and miraculous to the mundane and banal. There were baubles. There was jewelry. There were various pieces of dwarven craftsmanship, from tools to games to weapons technology. There was a tea set from Vanaheim, of all things, handcrafted. It seemed to Odin that if he looked at it for too long, it might come apart right in front of him. But Odin had to admit that some of the new additions were of particular note. The artifacts, that is. Items of such rarity that Odin was genuinely surprised to see them. First, there was the goddess Freya's old necklace, fashioned of gold. Brisingamen. Stealing trinkets from your fellow gods, uncle, Odin said, prodding him. He was joking, but at the same time he had to wonder how it got to be here. Mimir shook his head. Not stolen. An exchange between Freya and I, for information. What kind of information? That's only for Freya to know, and what she does with it is her business, not mine. Mimir left it at that, and Odin didn't much care to pursue the topic. But as his eyes fell on the artifact directly next to Brisingamen, he was perplexed again. It was Draupnir, the gold bracelet that self-multiplied. It had been given to Odin by a master dwarven craftsman as a result of some mischief on Loki's part. It was on a special stand behind a thick layer of glass. Odin glanced down at the gold bracelet still on his wrist. Mimir must have gotten hold of one of the copies, of course. Odin had been known to bet reproductions of the bracelet in games of chance or at sporting events, sometimes even giving them away as tokens of favor. It practically cost him nothing to do so. Yet there was something eerie about seeing one of them in Mimir's vault. What had it taken to track one of these down? What had Mimir been willing to do to get it? Next to Draupnir was another ring, also made of gold, Anvaranaut. It had once belonged to the dwarf Anvari. It was cursed. I'm surprised you're comfortable keeping this thing around, Odin said, tapping the glass with his finger. It's only harmful if you use it, Odin. Same with that one over there. Mimir pointed to another artifact. This one was even more surprising, the sword Turfing. A cursed weapon if there ever was one. Both the hilt and sheath were made of gold, shining with a brilliant luster. It's said that one cut from the blade can kill even a god, Mimir said with an eerie sort of chuckle. When drawn, it must taste blood before being put away. If it were to be unsheathed right now, it would mean the death of one of us, if not both. Mimir's smile broadened. Odin failed to see the humor. I do worry for you, Mimir. I have a number of weapons in my collection, and I can't say for certain that if I had the chance to get hold of such a sword, I wouldn't take it. But to display it so prominently seems a bit morbid. Of course it's morbid. The desire to accumulate always is. Have you ever thought about that? The way people latch on to things, the way they hold them close. People die, but the things they own survive them. One's possessions are the pieces of oneself that remain. A god need not die, Odin said. Not if he's powerful, not if he remains vigilant. It is true that we are long-lived, Mimir said, perhaps even immortal, but not invincible, not by far. Nothing lasts forever, Odin Allfather, not us, not this tree, not even the 9 realms. The possibility was disconcerting, the concept of the 9 realms coming to an end in particular. How would such a thing come to pass? It seemed ludicrous. And yet, coming from Mimir, it carried a certain ring of truth. But Odin wasn't one to dwell on the future overmuch, or even the past. But then, to preserve the moment, you did have to think of what might come to be now and then. It was why Odin did the things he did. It was why he ruled in Asgard. I can't say I appreciate the implication, Odin said. You mean the fact that things come to an end? The fact that you think I would let the 9 realms fall? Mimir's face fell somewhat, taking on a somber cast. It's not a matter of what any of us can do. It is the weird. Fate weaves a tapestry beyond the scope of our comprehension. We are merely threads in that weave. And that is all we are. Until you can accept that, you will never find peace. That was another thing about Mimir lately. The preaching, the condescension, the backwards, cowardly way of thinking. No wonder none of the Aesir fellowshipped with him anymore, not unless they needed something from him. The distaste must have been evident on Odin's face because Mimir brightened suddenly. But why dwell on such things? Let's have a drink, you and me. Tell me about Asgard. Let us talk of better things. That actually didn't sound so bad. There was a table waiting for them under the eaves of the tree, with 2 wooden chairs, 2 clay cups, and a clay pitcher of mead. The mead was warm. It was sweet, almost too sweet. But it had a good bite. As Odin drank, he felt warm, comfortable, at ease compared to before. It was always strange, each one-on-one visit with Mimir. They were 2 opposites of the same coin. While they were both Aesir, Odin was a warrior, while Mimir had become a keeper of knowledge above all else over the years. Odin valued knowledge and intelligence and the ability to hone his mind, but to a purpose. He knew that good tactics and a keen mind were the only way to keep his people safe, to protect Midgard and Asgard from the Jotun. That was, in fact, why he was here, and Mimir had to know that. Rather than getting to the point, however, Mimir continued to talk on and on about trivial and ridiculous matters, the ramblings of someone who had holed himself up away from the world for far too long. He wasn't connected to Midgard anymore, nor to its people. All the people Mimir seemed to care about were in books. He talked about the old writers and poets as if they were his old friends, as if he spoke with them on a regular basis. Mimir broke off in the middle of one of his rants. He gave Odin a sly, knowing look. I see you grow tired of these topics, but can you blame me? Here I am, an old man, all alone in my tower. It's not often I have a visitor, or a captive audience in this case. Something about that irked Odin, the idea that he was forced to sit here and listen to Mimir's diatribes, even if it wasn't far from the truth. Why don't you get out every once in a while, Odin said, taking another pull of his mead. Come to Asgard. You're always welcome at my hall, you know that. It was an invitation given out of politeness, and he hoped Mimir understood it as such. The idea of Mimir partying in Valhalla with the Einherjar was about as likely as Odin holing himself up in a place like Yggdrasil. It's too loud in Asgard for my poor old ears, Mimir said, and too bright and busy for my old eyes, even at night, perhaps especially at night. There was too much life there, Odin couldn't help but think. Mimir was too preoccupied with things of darkness rather than light. While the rest of the world went on living, in a certain way, Mimir was already consigned to death, and didn't seem to care. Maybe that was the thing that bothered Odin the most, disturbed him, "You're not old, uncle," Odin said, smirking, feeling a new wave of warmth from the mead. "You're just boring, is all." Mimir smiled. His eyes gleamed. "I suppose that's just a matter of perspective. One day you will see things my way. You'll become bored with war, with the parties, even the women. Knowledge can be a nectar sweeter than the greatest mead. Forbidden knowledge most of all. And that's why you're here, isn't it? You wish to drink from the sap of the tree, to become like me. Hopefully not exactly like him." "The Jotun are amassing in force," Odin said, "or so I've come to believe. There are whispers and murmurings of an alliance between the Jotun and sects of the Dark Elves. You want to know if what you're hearing is true. You want to know if disaster waits for you and your people. You want to know what you can do to stop it. But you don't want to hear it from me. That won't be enough. You have to know for yourself. You have to see it yourself. Because it's already begun, hasn't it? You're already on the path. You would give anything for the wisdom and knowledge you seek, which means I can ask for anything I want." Odin set down his cup. "You're willing to barter for the future of Asgard. Seems a bit callous, uncle, and surprisingly short-sighted coming from you. The Jotun won't stop with Midgard or Asgard or anywhere else. They'll come for you eventually. I'm well aware of what my fate will be. Beyond much of a doubt. But that's not the subject at hand. This is about you. Your hunger, your desire for knowledge. What are you willing to give me in exchange for what I seek?" Odin thought for a moment. "Are you asking me for money?" "Money is certainly of value to me. It allows me to acquire many of the objects I seek for my collection. But surely you can do better than that." Odin took another swig of the mead. He chewed the inside of his cheek. "Well, you already have my arm ring." "That I do. It took some hunting, too. If you'd asked, I would have simply given it." "Perhaps, but there is joy in the hunt, isn't there? To take something for yourself." This Odin understood. "Tell me then, uncle, what is it you're hunting for?" He shook his head. "Guess." Another swig from the cup. "Is it Gungnir, perhaps? My spear?" "A remarkable weapon, but surely worth trading in exchange for divine foreknowledge, the ability to protect his people." Mimir shook his head. "Sleipnir, then. Having a fast ship would do little to protect everyone else from the Jotun. You'll never see a faster ship, fastest in all the 9 realms." "So I hear. But what use would I have for such a vessel? My place is here with my books." "I see plenty of objects here you don't put to much use," Odin objected. "True, but I like having them around. They keep me company. A ship like yours, it would have to stay docked. Hard to admire and enjoy something I'm never going to see." That was only part of Mimir's reasoning. There really was a particular thing he was looking for, which could only mean he already knew he was going to get it. The thought unnerved Odin somewhat. But he pressed on. He listed one possession after another, laying out his assets like credits on a table, offering them up. But nothing was good enough. Finally, it came to Odin. For a recluse like Mimir, what was the one thing that would always allow him to satisfy his curiosity whenever he desired? It would be costly, perhaps even impossible, to replace it. But there were rumors that the Jotun had developed a means to counteract the technology anyway. Besides, the ability to look anywhere, see anything, it meant nothing if you didn't know where to look or what to look for. "I see now," Odin said. "You want Hlidskjalf, the silver throne. You drive a hard bargain, but a fair one. If that's what you want, I can arrange it." Mimir shook his head slowly. "Wrong again, nephew." He was beginning to look a bit wild in the eyes. Odin didn't like that. "I see now this is some kind of game to you. Well, I'm done playing. Tell me what you want. Or don't." If he left soon, he could get back before sundown on Asgard. He could have his wife at his side and a drink in his hand. He could be next to a warm fire, in good company. Odin, I want your eye. Odin coughed on some of his mead. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. What did you just say? You heard me? I hope I didn't. But you did. You heard me just fine. Mimir leaned forward, elbows on the table, grinning, a sharp, intense glint in his eye. Odin frowned. He set down his cup. Slowly, he made a show of wanting to get to his feet. I think that's just about enough family for one day. You asked. I'm telling you. Give me one of your eyes. I don't care which one. Do that, and you can drink from the tree. That's my offer. Odin watched Mimir's face, waiting for him to break, to crack, to laugh. But it didn't happen, because he was serious. He'd never been more serious in his life. Odin sat back, bewildered. You really have gone mad. Call it whatever you want, but those are my terms. But why? Why? Mimir said. Because I can. It's at the very limit of what you're willing to give. No more and no less. It is the price you're willing to pay. For now, knowledge will take whatever you can give, and you'll give more before the end. But for now, the eye will suffice. For a long time, Odin didn't say anything. He took another slow sip of his mead, an eye for a kingdom, an eye for victory, an eye for the future, an eye to save his people, an eye to see what no one else could, to be what no one else could be, what he needed to be. Of course, there was still the possibility that Mimir was having a laugh with him. After all, what kind of uncle would withhold the key to Midgard's future in such a way? Mimir, Odin realized. Mimir would do that. And he was. There was a milkiness about it, as far as the texture. The thick, rich feeling that goat's milk has on the way down. No flavor, though, none at all, and no color, just a clear, tasteless fluid, slightly iridescent, though perhaps his eyes were tricking him there. No, not eyes, not any more. For one moment he thought he did taste something, salty with a metallic tang. But then he became aware of the wet line of warmth running down one side of his face and over his lips, out from under the bandage. He put a hand on his cheek, wiping away the blood with his fingers. And then everything began to change, distorting around him. The visions, the sight. He was losing himself, being absorbed. No, being grafted. He began to feel distended. He could swear his skin had turned to crusty layers of black bark, and all across his body were those wide emerald leaves, twitching and shaking with his every breath. Distantly, he both heard and saw Mimir holding a jar with an eye floating in it. He tapped the glass, smiling at Odin. Another one, for the collection, for the collection, for the collection, for the collection.